Hi, welcome back to my garden. Well, the story continues. I've been circling around the question, which I think is a good question and one that we all need to ask. Why aren't we doing the things that we really profoundly enjoy doing more, if at all? And I suppose I reached a conclusion that, well, we have been kind of programmed not to. Programmed not by some sort of overt Machiavellian force that is deliberately, consciously trying to manipulate us. Well, maybe not always. Sometimes that does happen. But programmed by society, our parents, the sort of dominant social philosophy of the time. And at the heart of this programming are messages that make us want to fulfill certain goals, that we need to have more stuff, that we need to be more successful, that we need to be more popular. If only we are more of something, we will be happier, we will feel fulfilled. And the truth is we aren't. I think for a lot of people in sort of Western culture today, you go through your life, you struggle, you do things the way you're supposed to, you obey the rules, so to speak. And then you get to this point and ask yourself, is that it? Are we here? Because it doesn't seem to be all that it's cracked up to be. Over the last few weeks, I've been talking about sort of my own, for want of a better word, materialism, and how this was perhaps rooted in my upbringing at home. Not that my parents were terrible people or just driven by money or jealous, snobbish, or any of those things. I mean, we're all we all have a little dark side. But my parents in general, I think, had pretty solid values. But their values were forged by the idea that life wasn't that easy. But if you were smart and you worked hard, you could make it a little bit easier, or even a lot easier, and thereby, you'd be happier. And, well, my life sort of twisted and turned, and as I've discussed before, strangely, I fought against the idea of becoming a school teacher, at school, and this exit interview, let's call it that we'd have with the senior masters and the headmaster, the rector as he is known. The headmaster asked me if I thought of becoming a school teacher, and my answer was an overwhelming, I think I burst out laughing. That's how I remember it. And it was like, no, I want to become an actuary and make a lot of money and lead a good life. I don't want to become a school teacher. Look at all you guys struggling away. And of course, the irony was I did become a school teacher. And then the sort of twist of the twist was that just when my life seemed to be falling apart in London, when I'd failed to be given a job that I'd been told was mine at a school, I somehow chanced upon an advertisement for a British school in Lima, and the rest was history. I ended up getting the job, and my life just turned upside down in Peru. All the things that I'd assumed were given no longer were, and it was wonderful. I mean, I had, and I've spoken about this at many different moments on this channel. We talk about, my friends and I, how we were living the lives of rock stars or football players, just without any real need for a great talent, just by a strange quirk that we were relatively well remunerated at this British school, or at the British schools in Lima. And this made leading a fantastic life, well, possible. And yet, as that life sort of continued to morph from one thing into another, and I had my ups and downs, I reached a point where I guess I realized that having become financially very successful relative to what I was looking for, where I lived, and having been able to sort of buy my way into the sorts of things that when I was younger I thought would be the key to my happiness. I was able to travel at will. I didn't have to think twice about buying stuff. I could go to wonderful restaurants. If I went out on a Friday night, I'd meet fantastic people. I had interesting relationships with some very exotic, beautiful women. I mean, I'm not saying that, I'm not bragging, but it just became almost by definition a thing that would happen if you lived as a foreigner in South America, because, well, you were exotic. So, and therefore, most of the people that were around, if what appealed to you was something different, well, you were in paradise, and so I was. And yet it didn't answer all the questions. And now I've reached a sort of a new point where I think, and I've spoken about this again at length on this channel, that I think I'm a very strictly convinced sort of Maslow hierarchy sort of person. I mean, make of it what you will, but I think there's a lot to this theory of the hierarchy of needs, that we move through meeting physical needs to meeting social needs, and then eventually, when we really get to the gravy, is when we start operating on a, dare I say it, a deeper, more spiritual level, and we self-actualize. Now that's a term that is by no means clear-cut or obvious, but I suppose I would think of it as being the person you were kind of meant to be. I think the key to this self-actualization is that we need to find things that we enjoy doing and do them as much as possible, whilst meeting all the other responsibilities that we have in life. But there is time for that. It is possible. And that simply filling up the buckets of having enough to eat, or having a comfortable, secure place to sleep, overfilling those needs, a loving relationship, having just doubling down on that, well, sure, making it a little deeper, but just having more loving relationships, or having more food, well, that is not the answer. What I believe is the answer is having deeper, more meaningful connections, whether it's to things that you're doing, or the people with whom you spend your time, your loved ones. And in that sense, if we are to self-actualize, our real mission is a sort of self-mastery. a self-mastery of how we deal with other people and how we relate to things that we do. And some of that might require a little financial commitment. I'm working on my chess and having more funds so that I could perhaps eventually have some coaching sessions with a grandmaster. Well, that would be wonderful. But there is a way of mastering my chess without that. And in our marvelous Western world, I think many of us have what we need in extraordinary abundance. So what we need to do is not get more stuff. What we need to do is deepen our relationship with what we're doing and with whom we're doing it. And that is the key. So I guess that is a sort of a summary, a sort of manifesto, if you will. I said that I didn't believe that there is some sort of Machiavellian plan of some person deliberately manipulating you. I do think there are people fighting against this kind of worldview that I've just expressed, because it is in their interests essentially to sell you something, whether it's stuff or an idea. They want you to buy into another sort of way of being. But I believe they kind of rationalize that away. I don't think that they are... I think if they were confronted with the idea that they're deliberately doing you harm, they would push back against that. And indeed, many of the things that I follow, the sort of contemporary marketing model of what people are offering you, is manipulative. And yet the people that are trying to offer you coaching or courses probably believe that they are on some level helping you. And on some level they probably are. Just that they're doing it in such a way as to maximize how much material gain they accrue. So that I guess is nothing new in today's video, but a sort of summary of where I stand. And let's see where we go next week. It's probably time to tell an amusing story, but I just couldn't think of one today. Maybe I will next week. Otherwise, if that did make sense, please let me know in a comment. If you are interested, or not necessarily in an obvious, way. This isn't a sales pitch, but if you are joining me on this path, albeit in your own way, in your own time, by your own means, I'd love to hear. I think there's a sort of safety and strength in numbers. So that's it for this week. I trust your lives are filled with joy, and until next week, from a sunny Brazil, well, slightly overcast, and actually, I don't have my glasses on, but my eyes look like they're in deep shadow, and I hope that didn't spoil the video. Never mind. From an overcast, rainy Brazil, until next week.